Hi, friends, SAP users, consultants, experts, and all those who are interested in, learning about SAP S4HANA. Welcome to another training session with your SAP S4HANA FICO consultant, Kelechi Adiele. In today's class, we're going to be looking at a very important topic which we call WRICEF. It's an abbreviation. We're going to know what that meaning, what the meaning of WRICEF is. We're going to also know when to design your WRICEF document. You're going to know what are the content of each of these WRICEF documents, what are the contents. Also, the phase of the project where this document is very useful. All right. Why not? We have been able to create different videos on different topics in SAP S4HANA. Kindly get to our YouTube channel, subscribe, and feel free to share. The essence of this video is actually to share knowledge and to create awareness about SAP S4HANA processes. So please share and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Okay, so before we go into the discussion proper, now just a picture like the SAP S4HANA Activate methodology has different processes, different activities that lead to successful project implementation. And one of them is the explore phase, where there are various activities like understanding the business, developing of business blueprints, making sure that you have various documentations, risk analysis, functional specifications, and the rest of them. However, you have a scenario where of course, this client is a shipping company and they want to raise an invoice. However, the invoice format, and let's say before they raise an invoice, they have to generate what we call a manifest. And we have actually gone through the explore phase. We have gotten the business process, but realized that the process of the requirements to develop or to process a manifest, which is a shipping document, we cannot find that solution in, let's say, a sales order form or any other form in SAP standard process or SAP standard forms, right? So during the explore phase and the blueprinting, the functional consultant will take note of this gap because it's actually a gap. Any business process that will not fit into the SAP standard processes is actually a gap, and that gap has to be closed. So that gap or that process is noted down during blueprinting, and the document you use to capture, analyze, produce profile solutions to gap, and make sure that those gaps are closed. Proper documentation and analysis of gaps is done in a document we call WRICEF, an abbreviation. So we're going to understand what the WRICEF is, what the full meaning of WRICEF is. We're going to understand what are the requirements. We're going to understand how do you document gaps. We're also going to see a sample of what the WRICEF document looks like. There are standard formats, but I mean, every project they're unique in their own way, so they can design. The most important thing is to capture gaps, analyze them, and provide solutions to how those gaps can be solved, either through enhancement, customizations, forms, and the rest of them. However, if all the SAP requirements or standards do not fit, then of course, why not? You can look for third-party softwares, right? So let's go into and see in detail what the WRICEF is, and I pray you enjoy this class. You should probably enhance your knowledge for those who already understand these processes, and also improve understanding of this concept. Now about WRICEF. All the functional and technical consultants work on WRICEF at a point, yeah. During their SAP project lifecycle, in the realization phase. So it's mostly required in the realize, because there are gaps and you're trying to make sure those gaps are closed. You're trying to realize, you're going to make sure the in the process of closing that gap, you have actually profiled solution to that business problem. And of course, that solution can be used by the business. When the business requirement cannot, when the business requirements during your blueprinting cannot be fulfilled by standard SAP functionality, then we require a WRICEF. All objects are defined using WRICEF classifications in any implementation, rollout, migration, or upgrade project. So it's very, very important and can be used in any of these phases of a project, right? So you can see that when business requirement cannot be fulfilled by SAP standard functionalities, then you have to develop a WRICEF. Okay, so what does WRICEF stand for? Like I said, it's an abbreviation. WRICEF stands for workflows, for W, R for reports, I for interface, C for conversions, E for enhancements, and F for forms. So if you're in a project, if you're new to a project, of course you join the team new, during the explore phase down to realize phase, why not? You'll probably meet this document. So it's key you understand and know what the requirements are. Now, how WRICEF is used in an SAP project. The Agile SAP S4HANA Activate Manual has several phases or stages. During the explore and realize phases, especially, which involves developing business blueprints, we study the business requirements and map those requirements in SAP to provide solutions. These requirements, or requirements which cannot be satisfied by standard SAP applications, are called gaps. A fit gap methodology is used to identify the areas in which the newly planned SAP system or the business process for your organization fits or does not fit according to the needs. It basically determines the component that fits into the business goal and the gaps that need to be fixed or closed, right? So what this is trying to say is that when you identify gaps, you have to develop a fit gap methodology. That is a process that tries to identify the fits and the gaps. And of course, the gaps have to be closed using WRICEF. So any of the 6 terms in the WRICEF can be used to close a gap, actually. The main objective of the fit gap analysis is to identify any capture delta business requirements and gaps, to capture it, and of course, analyze it and prefer a solution, which might not be captured in pre-activated or pre-assembled solution in the sandbox. So, of course, it could have been omitted during the blueprinting also, right? So, but it could be a new requirement the business actually wants. Based on the category of gap, objects are created in the form of WRICEF items. Each gap will have one WRICEF object. We'll discuss that. So WRICEF, of course, objects are your configurations. The total inventory of WRICEF objects is considered a task as a task list of deliverables to be developed or managed, right? So the collection of all the gaps, which are like a total inventory of your WRICEFs or WRICEF object, is considered, it's a task list of deliverables. And of course, there is need to find solutions to those gaps because they are delta business requirements. Project functional teams are expected to fully test all the WRICEF objects and would have to be passed by business users, right? So every WRICEF will be tested when solution has been provided, and of course, the business owners or the business users have to certify that this meets their requirement. There are prerequisites for business go live. These are prerequisites for business go live in SAP. So without go live, without sorting out the WRICEF issues, we're going to have a delay in go live. The quality of WRICEF object plays a key role in determining the project success. So it's a very important document, and that is key to determining the project success. Okay, now the diagram illustrates the project phases and the significance of WRICEF in the realization phase. So, of course, we have the 6 key phases in the SAP S4HANA Activate methodology. You can see the various activities within those phases. Some activities will actually extend to other phases. So you can see fit gap and fit to standard analysis, which is part of blueprinting. And you can see that is basically under the explore phase, but in the realize phase, you can see configure and extend, which will also have to do with WRICEF development. You can see migrate, you can see test. So basically, WRICEF is a core activity within the realize phase of your project. So it's key to have that at the back of your mind and as consultants. Okay, so the next we're going to look at, well, basically, okay, so we're going to look at in detail what the various components that make up the WRICEF, what they are, and try to well, explain it and make sure you understand, what the WRICEF document is all about. Now, the first in the abbreviation is W, which we call workflows. Now, what are workflows? Workflow is the flowing of transaction data from one level to another in a sequence as per the organizational hierarchy. At every level, one or more actions are required. Once taken, the workflow advances to the next level. For example, when the purchase order is created for a value of more than 1,000 USD, US dollars, this is going to go to the manager for approval. Once approved, it will go to the VP for second level approval and so on. In the case of workflow as per business requirement, it's not available in the SAP standard application. Then this results in a rule WRICEF. Now, basically what this is saying about workflows is a process in SAP that helps you capture approval levels. So like I read, you could set up a workflow where when you raise an invoice, it has to go to probably 2-3 people for approval before the document is released and it gets to the next phase of the transaction. So if the business requirements, so this is existing in SAP standard process. However, if there's a business requirement that needs a workflow that is not within the SAP standard, then we'll have to develop a WRICEF. So you understand the catch. The catch is the WRICEF are functionalities within SAP. However, this WRICEF helps to close gaps. However, if these gaps cannot be closed by this standard documentations or standard tools in SAP, then we'll have a WRICEF object, which can, if workflow does not solve the problem, you can have other functions that can solve the problem. So within these 6 key areas, there has to be solution to every gap. Okay, so of course, here, when there's a gap, the functional consultant coordinates with the technical team and develop a custom object of a FUBRA workflow logic containing details that are to be sent, under which condition this workflow is to be triggered, and so on. So, if the business requires this functionality, is doable, the functional consultant has to actually work with the technical team. They develop since it's in a WRICEF, since it's a WRICEF document, the process of resolving or closing this gap will be, the process will be documented within the WRICEF document, and a team will look at it and try to close that gap. Right. So the next is reports. Now, a report in SAP is a custom transaction that is built using one or more multiple programs that reads the required information from database and produce or displays outputs after report execution based on input criteria entered on the selection screen of the transaction by an end user. It's like a display information in the required formats based on giving selections. So reports are outputs um, from various input selection criteria. So you want to display an invoice, you want to get an invoice printed out. There are requirements within the system, like it says, that involves the working together of multiple programs that will help you generate that output, right? Okay, so where does this come in? Where does this come in actually? In case the standard reports do not have the required feature. So let's say, for example, a customer wants a specialized invoice for a specific client, and that invoice will require not just the normal tables that are in the standard reports, but to involve more tables, it will involve more information, and this information is not available within the SAP standard invoice template, right? So what this means is that this is a WRICEF, so you have to document this gap in the WRICEF document. The process will be to, once it's identified, it's documented, sorry about that, a team is set up to look at this gap, work with the technical consultants, develop a custom invoice that will carry some of these features. And when that is done, you can say that that gap is closed, right? So of course, the technical consultants are those within the ABAP team and the basis team. They will develop programs that will help solve or provide solution to the report issue. The next is interfaces. In most of the companies, there are several processes in departments such as planning, shipping, inventory management, QA, quality assurance, etc., that are managed in external third-party systems that are non-SAP systems. For example, during shipping, they use third-party logistics soft system to pick and pack and ship the delivery. For that, the SAP delivery information is sent to the external non-SAP system, and the pick, pack, and shipment information is received in the SAP system through a middleware. These EDIs and external data interfaces, communications are done through interfaces, IDOCs, and IDOCs are used for the data transfer. So, of course, EDI and IDOCs are very core components of the SAP system that are used to enhance communication with third-party applications, right? So I'll give you a scenario. Like I said, a shipping company wants to raise manifest another shipping document. The standard ACP doesn't have that requirement, right? So you have to get a third-party software that can be used to raise the manifest. And there is an interface, an EDI, that communicates between, that creates a communication. Okay, sorry for that break. Right. So once, like I was saying, that once the document is raised, the external document, for example, like I was, sorry for the break in transmission. Once the manifest is raised, the manifest is a non-SAP system. There is an EDI in SAP system that will communicate. These are actually done with by the technical team. They will create an interface, a link, a program that will interface with the external SAP, the external non-SAP system. In our previous project, we used one we call IQ Ship. So IQ Ship would raise the manifest. Automatically, that would create an interface that will flow, that would, ensure that the information flow into SAP and automatically create a sales order. So that was an example of, how interfaces work. Why? Because the standard SAP system does not have, it's not created. Of course, we should have a shipping solution, but like I said, business processes are unique in different ways. All right. So SAP is robust enough to communicate with other third-party applications, and that is very key. That's very, very important to the success of SAP S4HANA, right? All right, so that EDI facilitates the communication, and iDocs actually facilitate the data transfer between the various documents. So between the manifest document in IQ shape and the sales order in SAP, there is an iDoc that ensures that data is transferred. There's also a check within the SAP system to check data transfer failures. So you could actually check if the data was transferred successfully or if there's a failure in data. And the SAP system has a functionality to also, um, you know, make these checks and give a feedback on whether that data transfer was successful or if it failed. So this is an example of how you can use interfaces in Wricef. But this has to be, once it's identified that during the blueprinting that SAP standard cannot meet this requirement, that information has to be documented in the blueprint. Discussions are made with the business on how to get third-party applications and how these applications can interface with each other. Now, not all applications interface with SAP. So, these are high-level discussions that will be carried out. So you can see, for example, a non-SA system in the middle is an EDI that facilitates the transfer, that facilitates communication, and the IDOC document facilitates the transfer of that information, right? So, okay, the next is conversion. When SAP is implemented or upgraded, the organization is going to sunset its legacy system. So what this means is that once the migration is done, or once SAP is, once you want to, start using SAP, the legacy system, which could be other applications used by the business, will have to, stop. You have to stop using them. That's a sunset. Thus, their business live data needs to be uploaded in SAP application. To upload the data in SAP system, such as basic master data, transactional data need to be converted from one form to another as per system requirements. This is called conversion. So conversion actually assists in data migration, and this is core in the realize phase, right? So in SAP S4HANA, we have the LTMC legacy transfer migration workbench. That is a very robust functionality that can be used for data migration. It has, all the forms, that are necessary to create new data within the SAP system. In the ECC, we have LSMW. That is still functional in S4HANA, but not. But of course, the advice is to use LTM. So it's easy to use. You don't have to you don't have to create your forms. Forms are already created. You just have to provide the required data, and in matter of seconds or minutes, the system uploads, creates and uploads information. So of course, this is called to the finance. Master data, material master data, transactional data, especially if it's not a year end, will have to be migrated into the system, right? So all these data are important. And of course, where the business, where there's, where SAP cannot actually deliver on conversions, there is need to raise a WRICEF, right? So the WRICEF will look at the actual data that needs to be moved, and of course, look at other functionality within SAP that will enhance data migration. Okay, the next is enhancements. If the business requirement cannot be satisfied by SAP standard features, then the project team will add some custom functionality to modify the SAP standard. This is called enhancements, right? So we have talked about enhancements could be in forms, it could be during conversions, it could be during third-party applications. But the most important thing is that um, once it doesn't fit, once there's a gap, then we have to call up to the technical team, especially our BAP consultants. They use functionalities like the bodies, enhancement frameworks, to enhance the system, to bring the system up to speed with the business process. That's if that functionality is available within the SAP system, right? But that gap has to be documented in the RICEF, and the team responsible have to meet, um, look at what the requirement of the business is, and profile the required solution within the SAP S4HANA space. Now, I think the last is form. Now, forms are outputs, basically. Like I said earlier, there are a lot of forms business use, from POs to invoices to, payment advices, um, to approval documents. Now, the business can be used to a particular form, or it could be a requirement by law, or in business, or by a client, that you present your output has to follow a particular format, right? So if the SAP standard format cannot provide you with that functionality, then you might need to document that gap within the RICEF, and of course discuss with the ABAP team for customizations, for that form to meet the standard requirements of that business, right? So basically, this is what RICEF is all about. And it's key that you understand these various solutions that are available. They are very important to the successful implementation of any project, any SAP S4HANA project. And it cuts across all modules. So all modules that have gaps should be able to document their gaps within the RICEF. Now, before we wrap up this class, let's look at a sample of what the RICEF looks like. Right, so you can see a sample of a RICEF document. It's a technical specification, data conversion and interface. You can put the RICEF name. So document information, these are required information you need to fill up. Then, of course, this document people have to actually have team leads that will actually approve when these gaps are identified. We have a process team lead, we have a development team lead from both business and SAP implementation team. You have a table of contents. So, right, so you can get the RICEF ID. So all these specifications will be discussed and made available to all the consultants. The RICEF ID, the description, how these documents will be filled, and what are the core requirements. Then you have the transport information. Please, you can check our YouTube channel. We have discussed about transporting customizations. So of course, key is the request number. That has to do with the new, when the gap is resolved, you have to of course, perform a customization that will generate a customization request. You put the request number so that it will facilitate the transport of that customization from probably the development client or the testing client to the production client, so that end users can start benefiting from the change. Have the tax number, the object identifier, then the layout. So all these will be discussed as per business. If you have, if you want to make further description of that RICEF, that can be done. Assumptions can be noted, issues can also be noted. Then you have the area where you give updates about that particular RICEF, it has been resolved, how it was resolved, and describe the issue, right? You have also data conversion and interface. If it's a RICEF that will require conversion, so like I said, the ABAP team would design interfaces that would, fit, within the SAP system. So if it's data migration, you specify that. So basically, this document is used to capture the RICEF profile, capture the solution, and capture whether it's a data migration issue or if it's a customization issue, how the customization will be transported. If it's a data migration issue, how that issue will be migrated into the system. Right. So this is an example of what the RICEF is. So thank you very much for your time. Remember to like and share on all social media platforms, YouTube, LinkedIn, and the rest. Most importantly is to share, because the essence of this video, like I've said, is to be able to share knowledge and improve understanding, right? So why not? You can reach me on my email. You can WhatsApp me using the number if you need more information about training, support. And thank you for watching. Do have a nice day. Look, of course, once you subscribe, you're going to get updates about more videos that we'll be looking at in our next session. So just a tip of the iceberg, in our next session, we're going to be looking at introduction to data migration, the use of LTMC and LTMOM, right? Very, very important. Once you have your RICEF has been done, one of the activities that is key to the realization of your realization of a project is to move data, data migration. So you have to migrate both master data and transactional data into the system. So we'll look at that in our next session. So thank you very much for your time, and do have a lovely day. Remember, it's your SAP S4HANA Finance and Control Consultant, Kelechi Adiele. Bye, and stay safe.